Hello, this video is about the American presence in Asia after Afghanistan, after leaving Afghanistan. There's a lot of talks, and articles and assessments about the failure in Afghanistan, the defeat in Afghanistan, whether the American presence and experience and withdrawal there is comparable to the experience of the Soviet Union there in the 80s. And all of that is merited. Very important as well, because the experience there lasted 20 years. Tens of thousands of Afghans died, thousands of Americans died, and over $1 trillion were spent in those 20 years. So any question about the merit of why America was there is worthy, is of course justified. But I think what is probably more important at this stage is the future, and particularly in Asia. Why? Because America is not leaving Asia. America is leaving Afghanistan, very, very likely to strengthen its presence in East Asia. Why in East Asia? Because there is the grand strategic confrontation with China. And I think there are points that link the withdrawal from Afghanistan with the coming confrontation, strategic confrontation with China. 3 points in particular. Of course, the confrontation between the US and China is strategic in nature. Political influence in probably almost every region in the world. It is cultural, it is economic, obviously, it is ideological. It's about the nature of the state, the nature of the political system, the social contract with the people, and many other aspects. But there is a specific military dimension here, and even specific in terms of location. That is, since the end of the Second World War, so for the past 70 plus years, the US military and Navy in particular had access and ability to roam and do whatever it wants in almost anywhere in the world. And certainly since the end of the Cold War, anywhere in the world, particularly in the Pacific Ocean, which is extremely strategic. It's one of the most important strategic waters in the world because it allows access to so many different parts of the world. It is opposite to the western shores of the US. And of course, it is leading to China, to Japan, to different parts of Asia and others. However, in the past few years, if there was one strategic objective of China military, that was to deny the United States Navy the ability to operate properly and freely in the neighborhood, especially the maritime neighborhood of China, so the China Sea and the area around it. So the question here is, we have a potential clash, strategic objectives at least. The US wants to retain the ability to operate freely anywhere it wants, including in the area around East Asia, including around the China Sea, while China does not want the US to have that ability. And therefore the question, the move out of the withdrawal from Afghanistan will lead to withdrawal of so many capabilities, military capabilities, presence of forces, intelligence, resources and others. And certainly some of that, if not a lot of that, will be shifted further to East Asia to bolster the American presence there. The question is, will it affect the clash of objectives here between the US and China? The second point, I think, links the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the coming strategic confrontation with China is more on the mindset of war. mindset of struggle, at least. The US, in its presence in Afghanistan in the past 20 years, and even in Iraq, was a colossal power, superpower, with immense resources, in the face of by far less opponents, by far less resources and capabilities. And that puts you in a certain mindset that's very different from a mindset in which you are facing an opponent that is almost on par with you. Indeed, China is not on par with the US yet, but it is rising very fast and it is developing its capabilities incredibly fast and on grand scale, and therefore there is potential parity coming. And the mindset of fighting by far lesser opponents is vastly different from the mindset of fighting, or not fighting, but having a strategic confrontation with an opponent that is almost on par with you. And the question here is, will the US be able to evolve its mindset, its way of looking at the idea, at the notion of struggle, from the experience of the past 20 years in Afghanistan and to some extent in Iraq, to the mindset needed for dealing with an opponent of the size and capabilities of China? The third point that links the withdrawal from Afghanistan with the coming confrontation with China is about the morality, the meaning, the objectives of struggle. Because anybody who follows the writings of veterans of the Afghanistan war, and also to some extent of the Iraq war in the US, will find that the writings are full, sometimes have anger in them, but often, very often, full of questions. Why were we there? Why did we fight? Why did we stay there for 20 years? What was the point, especially given the results? So, the US now, as it enters into this grand strategic confrontation with China, faces a very serious challenge, which is how to mobilize the society after 30 years at the end of the Cold War, how to mobilize the society mentally so that it prepares for this grand strategic confrontation with China. And at the core of that, there is this question of what was the moral point, what was, not the moral, but the moral point, objective, the meaning of that war that has just ended but had lasted 20 years. The US decision circles, administration right now, would need to answer that, because the answer will be crucial for preparing the mind and preparing the psyche in the American society for the mobilization needed for this grand, big, strategic confrontation with China.